Hi, welcome to Brass Matters. I'm John Wallace, and if you don't know me, I'm obsessed with incredible performances, chance discoveries, and unexpected musical treasures. The Wallace Collection and Glasgow's Cooperation Band have just released a recording of Derek Bourgeois' Concerto for Brass Quintet and Brass Band, which is available on all streaming sites. In this podcast, we're going to focus on this Bourgeois concerto. At the same time, we may raise a few questions as to why this prolific composer of 15 major works for brass band and 116 symphonies for orchestra is not better known. So, joining me to discuss Derek Bourgeois is Tony George, co-artistic director of the Wallace Collection, tubist, ophicleidist, and seventh player who also throws much energy and time into teaching Systema Scotland and then in its fill-in brass band project in Stirling and the St Andrews Music Participation Programme in Fife, known as STAMP, equally at home in the Musikverein Gewandhaus and Elbphilharmonie as Metal Hill, Castlebern and Dunkirk primary school classrooms. Tony helped introduce over 1,500 children to the joys of brass playing in the past few years. So, Tony, how do you do it? How do you fit it all in?
Wow, John, that's some introduction. I'm not sure I recognize myself in there. That's incredible. With the teaching, it's just such a joy, isn't it? When you work with young people, you just get so much back out of them. The energy you put in, the commitment you put in, it's just all repaid 1,000-fold. And talking about the 1,500 people that we started, a lot of them are in large groups now. So we're working with a whole class at a time, which is joyful because you can be so musically adventurous with a large group of people. It's amazing.
It can also be quite daunting because I remember when I joined you in my old primary school, Carlton, Woodside, and Glenrothes, and we had 50 kids there, and I just didn't know where to start. But you've got this sort of magic at, making the kids pay attention. And I remember that first session that we had very well. I thought, we're in a human zoo. But very quickly you tamed it down and got something out of the kids.
Do you not find, though, that if kids are interested in something or if kids are interested in you, there's something about a young person wants to like you.
Yes.
A young person wants to work with you. And if you're giving them a lot of things to work with, they really enjoy it. So I remember at that school in particular, there was one young lad who he wasn't really into playing the trumpet, but he was really into being Mr. in charge of all the PowerPoints that I used. So I let him do that so he could still play a part in the performance. And that really helped with him. It helped with his self-esteem. So he wasn't failing at something. We just gave him another thing for him to succeed at.
And when the project started, of course, COVID came along and the whole thing went online. How did you cope with that?
Well, at first, when you go online, you think, this isn't going to be very good. You can't really hear what people are doing. How can you get them to play the trumpet properly? How do they get good embouchures? But you work out strategies. And in a way, I think going online really helped reinforce how you work with a young person to play in as technically a correct way as possible. So you're not limiting them when they get a bit better later on. And for example, we introduced the use of straws. All the young people in their pack, they had a straw with their trumpet. And so they take the straw out and think, oh, what am I going to do with that? I'm going to drink some milk or something. But no, it's to blow so that you get a really good shape of your face, blow into the straw, and then you put the mouthpiece on top, and hey, presto, you can make a sound. And you don't have to be with them to do that. You can do that remotely.
And what was the point of starting all of these kids on brass instruments? Where do they go?
The whole germ of the idea is that brass bands, not just in Fife, but all over the UK, are seen as something that is dying off, something that's not important anymore. And I know for you, and definitely for me, playing in a brass band was something that became really important when I was young. I think for me, it was the Kingsbridge Prize Silver Band, which had no prizes and didn't have any silver instruments, but it was in Kingsbridge. And I used to go there with a peripatetic teacher called Frank Huxham. And he would take his most interested students and say, oh, come and play in this brass band. So I said, okay. So he used to come and pick me up, go to drive into the middle of the countryside, play in this brass band. The guy next to me, Derek, was a postman, and he would turn up in his shorts to rehearsal. He would speak like that. He said, hello, Tony, how you doing? You're right, my boy, you're right. Yeah, keep on playing that there bass. So it was brilliant. It was just like being this little kid. I was like 13 or 14 amongst this whole band of adults. I was thinking, oh, I feel really posh. I feel really special. So trying to get that feeling of what it's like to feel special, to be a part of a group, and to make music together. And when you make music together, it's the most joyous thing.
Yeah. It's an incredible thing that this is attached to a university as well, which is making its resources available for primary school
Yeah.
kids, part of the escalator of whatever into higher education. But it also has other opportunities because you're working in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, with the stamp project as well. How does
That's
that
right.
work?
That was crazy. The way that came about was one of the professors at St Andrews in geography was in the airport in Dar es Salaam, got talking to someone who was a DJ and sound producer. They got talking, got on really well, and she said, "Oh, I work for this project called the Action Music Academy." And then fast forward a year later, Action Music Academy and Stamp became partners, and now we deliver online lessons to the project in Tanzania. We're working with mainly kids from an orphanage at first, which was incredibly important and a real privilege to work with them. And then we went out last year and we worked with both the kids and also with keyboard players, bass guitarists, violinists, saxophonists, anyone who wanted to come along. And we created a performance, which is really exciting. But the whole point there is to try and empower the staff at the Music Academy to be able to work with the students on their own without any input from anyone else, so that they can then generate interest in brass playing and begin a tradition of brass playing in Tanzania. Now, the tradition is kind of there, it's isolated to churches and to the police band. But one of the theories is, well, if you give these people something to work on, something to work for, when they finish school, fantastic. They've got a destination. They can go and play in the police band, or maybe they can go and play in the church band, and that'd be fantastic. So that's what we're hoping will happen there. A little bit like in Fife, where we're hoping that the young people, once they progress from learning in the classroom, go on to the local brass band, where there are lots of fantastic, willing volunteers to help them learn how to play instruments with valves and slides, and then they become part of the brass band.
Brilliant. As musicians, we've just been talking about Dar es Salaam.
Yeah.
We've had some exciting times all over the world, and one particularly exciting time was in Odessa
Oh yeah,
in
I remember that.
Ukraine
Yeah.
when we encountered this Derek Bourgeois concerto for the first time. What are your
Amazing.
memories of that trip?
Do you know, I remember a very long sleeper train from,
From Odessa to Kiev.
I think it might have been, was it Lviv
All the
to Odessa? I think, and in the carriages they had coal fires, and someone came along and fed the fire. And do I remember that maybe one of us, I'm not looking at anyone, but one of us maybe had a bed fall on their head?
yes, it fell on my head and knocked me out.
Yeah.
I was on the lower rank, but we were eating. I think it was from Odessa to Kiev
Oh,
actually,
could have been.
because after the concert, do you remember that? Nobody was about,
Yeah.
and we'd had such a fantastic time. We expected that the orchestra would have been there to see us off at the end, but they weren't. So miserably, we went into the band bus down to the station.
Yeah.
It was in February, I think, and it was snowing.
It was,
And
yeah.
there was these big Ukrainian soldiers in bare hats,
Yeah.
big, huge, and the snow was falling on the epaulettes. And when we went onto the station platform, a Dixie band,
Yeah.
Dixieland band
Yeah.
from the orchestra started up, and the whole orchestra was there on the station platform to see us off. And we had this dance
That's
and
right.
they had
Yeah.
this fantastic cake to give us
Oh,
that was made of like animal innards and stuff. It was like a real big patty
yeah.
cake. It was a savoury cake, and they'd given us this meal to take on the. And so we were in after all of that. Fantastic. Lots of vodka was taken, of course.
Yeah.
We were in. We were having this sort of party
That's right.
in my sleeper compartment out of one, and the whole of the upper thing
Oh, that's
fell on
right.
my head.
Yeah.
So I dropped on the floor unconscious, as one does, and then got up and just carried on as normal. And I've had this sort of big sort of dent in my head ever since, and it's never done me any harm.
Amazing, amazing. But I do remember Odessa was where we played the Bourgeois Concerto.
Yes.
Um, how did it come about that he wrote that for the group? Because it wasn't originally for orchestra, was it?
So it was originally written as Brass Quintet #2 for the Philip Jones Brass Quintet, but they said it was just too difficult,
Wow.
stamina wise and everything.
Yeah.
So he rearranged it in 1975 for brass band and brass quintet. And it wasn't then really, it was played a couple of times in the 1980s. The BBC broadcast it with uh, Jeffrey Brand conducting, and it went into further obscurity until we were going on this tour, and I think you mentioned Derek Bourgeois to me, because I think you've always had a flame for Derek Bourgeois, him being a tuba player, and so I think I phoned him up and said, "Will you arrange it for orchestra? Because we've got this date in Odessa with the Odessa
Yeah.
Philharmonic." With the conductors, it's going to be a big deal. He said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I think it was a couple of weeks later it arrived, and I just was absolutely amazed. No money passed hands or anything. Derek just sort of dashed it off. But he was like that, wasn't he?
Oh, he was such a lovely man. I remember I told you I used to play in the Kingsbridge Prize
Yes.
Silver Band. Well, about the same sort of time as that, maybe 14, 15. I went to the library in Plymouth, the music library, because libraries then used to have music sections. They don't anymore, but they used to have music. And there's a book by Clifford Bevan called The Tuba Family. I thought, oh, I've got to have a look at this. So I took it out on loan, and I was reading it like it was almost like the most gripping novel I'd ever read. It was fantastic. I was learning so many new things. And at the back, there was a list of compositions for tuba. And there's one which I thought, oh, that looks interesting. It was a concerto for tuba by Derek Bourgeois. So, and it gave his address as Bristol University. which I guess is when he was working with the Sun Life Band, because that's a Bristol band. And I thought, because I was really naive and young, I thought, I'm going to write to him and ask him how you get hold of it. So I wrote him a letter, and maybe a week later, a big package arrived at my house. Oh, what's this? So I opened it. It was the tuba part, which he'd obviously photocopied and stuck together, a recording of it with John Fletcher and the BBC National Orchestra of Wales, and a letter saying, hope you enjoy this. It's really nice to hear from you. Good luck playing my concerto. Oh, wow. And then I looked at it and I thought, blimey, this is hard. Because it was written for John Fletcher.
Yes.
As you know, Derek Bourgeois and John Fletcher were in the National Youth Orchestra together. A little bit like you and John Miller.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So they were next to each other. And I guess Derek must have heard Fletch and thought, oh, well, that's what the tuba can do. I'm going to write that. And I thought, it's so hard. It went really low and really high. And the concerto for tuba lasted for about 45 minutes. It's like ridiculous.
Well, he himself, I think, described it as a symphony with a tuba obbligato.
That sounds about right.
45 minutes piece for the tuba.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It's a fantastic piece of music. But you know, he wrote another one.
Two.
Yeah.
Yes.
He wrote, and the guy he wrote it for was a guy called Dave Carter. And Dave has been the tuba player of the Forest Philharmonic Orchestra.
I used to be in the Forest Philharmonic.
Was that with Frank von Shipway?
Frank Shipway in Walthamstow.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is a beautiful concert hall, actually.
Walthamstow Town Hall. I don't think it exists anymore in the same way.
Oh.
But it was a beautiful place to play in. Anyway, so Dave Carter had been with the Forest Philharmonic for 30 years. And exactly in the same generous spirit that Derek wrote the concerto for orchestra for you, and he sent me the tuba part and a recording to me, some person he didn't know, from Adam. They approached him and Derek said, yeah, all right, I'll do that. No fee.
How did he do it, though? Because there's 15 major pieces for brass band, which I think is enough, but 116 symphonies. Did he ever sleep? Really?
I don't know. If he did sleep, he must have slept very well or very short. But he also had a tremendous sense of humour. You know, when you play his music, it's happy music, isn't it? I remember bits of that concerto for the orchestra, sitting in front of these Ukrainian musicians. It was like being back in Soviet Russia. You know, the sound.
They loved the piece, because it was originally from 1972.
Yeah.
It was real Cold War music, wasn't it?
It sounded like Shostakovich, yeah.
Yeah.
And amazing. And you had these laser beam trombone sounds, big fat tuba. It was just, incredible. It was such a privilege to be able to sit in front of them.
Yeah.
I remember I played the concerto as part of a brass band when I was at Guildhall. That was in 87. And the quintet of soloists did the solo part. And even then I was thinking, this is a special piece of music. It's just so well written.
Yes.
And all of Derek's music back then was handwritten, and it was all his own handwriting. And you can really recognise, anything that he wrote. It just looks just like everything else he wrote. It's fantastic.
I somehow prefer handwritten music, don't you? I mean, you turn up with handwritten music these days, and people can't read handwriting. You need it printed out.
That is very true. I mean, I sometimes play in Scottish opera, and you still get sometimes stuff that was hand copied.
Yeah.
And you can see that people are struggling to read it because it's just not what we're used to anymore. And I think sometimes you can tell from someone's handwriting how they want the music to be played.
Yes, I mean, there's some very, very soft bits in Derek's piece, and in his sort of score, the soft bits are actually very, very hazy and almost phased out, and then the bits that are the laser bits are almost like that. They're very, very dark pen strokes.
Wow, yeah. No, it was just an incredible experience to play it. But he also had a really good sense of humour. You know about his organ serenade?
No.
No, it's the Opus 22. He wrote it for his wife to walk down, his first wife, to walk down the aisle at the wedding. And it's not written so you can walk to it. You practically have to limp to it. It's not in an even time signature. So he always had a sense of humour.
That's in 11/8 or something.
Exactly.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's in 11/8. Yeah, it's called his Serenade. It's been arranged for brass band. It's very good. Yeah.
So shall we listen to a little bit of the first movement?
Oh, yes, please.
So, what do you think?
Isn't it incredible how he's got so many different musical ideas, all pushed on top of each other, and yet they all fit together incredibly. And the changes of time signature feel really natural, but they're quite complex to do.
Yeah, yeah. And it, it, it's amazing to me how well schooled and skilled a composer is. He studied with Herbert Howells, of course, at the college after he was at Cambridge, I think
That's
it was,
right.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
And he did conducting with Adrian Bole as well. And so, I mean, that canon there with all the different instruments having a shot at it, except you're on the continuo throughout. You can tell he's a real classically, with a few bourgeois twists.
Yeah.
That could almost be Gabrielli.
Absolutely. What I really like about his music, though, is that there's always this sense of rhythmic urgency. Even in the slow music, there's always a sense of a rhythmic purpose to what he's doing. It's really infectious. I think he probably quite liked some Cuban dance music and things like that. There's a lot of those inflections in his music.
Oh yeah, that comes in the last movement, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We'll have a little listen to that later on. There's a sort of rumba, isn't
Yeah.
there? Towards the
But
towards the
it's
this
not.
makes you think, oh, we're getting a bit more light-hearted.
Yeah.
Getting to the end.
Exactly. But it's not just in this piece, it's in a lot of his music. There are real echoes of Latin American music. I wonder if if he was alive today, if he would watch Strictly Come Dancing.
First movement sort of dies out really, and then the second movement creeps in, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Should we? I mean, it's almost inaudible. Should we have a listen to that next?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
you get those colours?
It's almost like it's floating. It's an
Yeah. That's Mr. George in the middle of his solo. Mr. Stone.
Mr. Stone, yeah.
Hi. Tommy Dorsey.
Yeah.
Solo. Yeah. Given to the violin section.
Yeah.
So the bonnets.
I do think that the writing is, the chording is just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And the beginning of that section, with the way he's done the harmonies, is just so clever.
Yeah. I love the solos that he's given
Yeah.
to members of the band
Yeah.
as well. And the flugel player. I
Yeah.
keep calling her by her maiden name, Steph Mitchell, because that's how I knew her when she was at the Conservatoire. But I just love her solo because I play the tune first, and then she plays it twice as well later on, and you think, that's what's supposed to happen. I'm sure Derek meant it like that. That the C trumpet sounds a little bit colder than the flugelhorn you have later, and it comes sailing over the band, even at pianissimo, and people just go, wow, the breath is taken away.
Yeah.
And to do that, just purely brass instruments, I think is quite astounding. You can hear violins, woodwind, everything in there. It just doesn't sound like a brass band on its own. But 7 of the other pieces that we've done, with brass quintet and brass band, do have that quality that they stretch the sound of the band and of the quintet as well.
Do you not think that part of that is the quality of the composer? That a composer who's really imaginative and thinks, okay, well, this would be interesting if, for example, the brass quintet said some words and then the brass band echo those words. So you have lots of different ways of using the quintet and the band, sometimes in opposition, sometimes together. It's the genius of the composer, I think.
Well, I think it's the composer giving enough space to the interpreter to make something that's beyond the music,
Yeah.
just beyond the notes.
Yeah.
Then that there's an extra emotional
Yeah.
depth and dimension to the music. And I think Derek has that.
It's certainly when you play his music, you can be very expressive.
Mm-hmm.
And the music, to me, feels that it wants you to be really expressive. And it doesn't, especially the slow stuff, it doesn't feel that it's boundaried by the bar line. It feels almost like the bar line just happens to exist there.
Yeah.
And you can just bend and shape your way around things.
Mm-hmm.
Let's listen to the third movement. There's so much in it. I think it would be wise just to listen to the whole thing.
I agree. very effective. Just two trombones in tones. Mr. George. So much soul tuba, isn't there?
I can tell who's a tuba player.
Here we go.
It's almost like a rumba that someone is misremembering from a distant time.
Yes, it's sort of slightly disintegrating.
Yeah.
Dali surrealist rumba.
Exactly, a surrealist rumba. Yeah. And the trombone writing is just so good, isn't it? It's exactly in the right register.
He wrote a trombone concerto for Bousfield, didn't he?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a really good piece as well.
We did this in England with Derek as well, with an orchestra he was conducting at the time. Was it in Portsmouth?
I wasn't doing that.
Ah.
Yeah. Was that the second performance of it?
Yes.
Right.
I think it was Portsmouth, not Portsmouth Sinfonia.
Wow.
Portsmouth Symphony Orchestra, I think, in the cathedral there. Disintegrates here, doesn't it?
Very much so.
And picks up again.
This is the cadenza bit where the trombone and French horn and tuba would not go very low at some point.
Oh yes. Wonderful orchestration for the bass sinfonium. This is where his sense of humour comes in.
Definitely. The ending is just so exciting. An ending.
And that's the ending, yeah.
Yeah.
The band just disappears into the distance with a big diminuendo,
Yeah.
and the quintet
Just
comes
got
into
louder and louder. Yeah.
ascendancy at the end. So it's, I mean, how long is the piece? It's about 20 minutes, but it's got, uh, it's got lots of red meat in it, isn't it? It's a,
Yeah.
you know,
There's something for everyone in it. And if you're a fan of brass bands, it's a really important work.
yeah, yeah. Have you played any of his 116 symphonies?
No, I wish I had. I don't think his music is programmed very often at all.
And do you think we could set up a weekly, a weekly bourgeois symphony? It's the sort of thing that the BBC would have done in the old days, but I don't think the BBC has quite the capacity to do that these days. Even though it's still got 5 orchestras or so, it's got so many different bases
Yeah,
to touch
that's right.
that maybe Derek Bourgeois will have to wait a couple of thousand years till it's his turn.
Just someone goes back and rediscovers.
Yes. Yeah.
So what other pieces have you done as a quintet and orchestra? Because I think I remember coming to a concert of yours with a piece by Michael Tork called Copper.
Yes, we did that. Yeah. So that was Brass Quintet and Orchestra. We did that at the Queen Elizabeth Hall in the great old days of Philharmonia when David Welton was pushing the boat out with different section members, woodwind with Michael Collins, who was doing stuff with that, and with the brass section, he gave us a whole concert at Queen Elizabeth Hall to to do stuff that showcased the brass and stuff with Chris Warren Green and all the rest of it. It was amazing.
That's
amazing
incredible.
time. And so, good God, it's so long ago. I'll have to get all the programs out and just see what we did.
So I don't think there are many pieces for quintet and orchestra, because I suppose it's quite a chunky thing to have to do, isn't it? Get a brass quintet in rather than just a soloist.
I think even in the same concert we did some brass quintet music, and then also I arranged Sonata 20 of Gabrielli for 5 choirs of strings.
That's right.
And I can remember the critic, I think it was Paul Griffiths in the Guardian, said, "What an obtuse thing to do." And he's absolutely right,
I remember that, and there was lots of ornamentation in the cello part, and I remember what you were watching from the side of the stage, and I just thought, wow, this is exciting to hear. That was an incredible concert, though.
Yeah. I think the string players were in shell shock afterwards.
Well, I can understand why, but yeah, brilliant! What a fantastic thing. But yeah, I think getting back to Derek's piece, the way he writes for the quintet is fantastic, because it's just playable. It's not impossible. It's not easy, but it's doable. And when you get it right, it sounds really exciting.
Is that something to do with standards having changed, though? Because remember, he wrote this in the early 70s, and we're in the mid 1920s now. We're 50 years on.
Yeah.
And what was considered impossible, Gary Hart and Philip Jones looked at this piece in 1972 and said, "Derek, this is impossible. Go away and think again." And he went away and thought again. But now, it's you could really get any, from any of the music colleges, you could get 3 or 4 brass quintets who would make a very passable job, and sometimes, a better job than we would make of the quintet. And of course, like the co-op band, just ate the piece for breakfast, didn't they?
They loved it.
It was just like, meat and drink to them. Oh, Tony, I remember we played this concerto with Foden's as well at the, the Great
That's
Northern
right,
Brass Festival and that they have every January in at the RNCM.
I remember that. That
Uh-huh.
was very good. But I think we had to have an emergency trombonist come in at very short notice.
Oh, you're from the band, was that
From the
John?
band, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
John Barber.
John Barber, yes, came in and played with it, yeah.
And I think the pair of us, we were down working with a youth band in Wales,
Yeah.
and John Barber was on that,
Uh-huh.
and I had to coach him through through our repertoire one evening in the chapel at about midnight, and then a couple of days later we were playing at the Foden's.
And I suppose we've both played probably Blitz and Apocalypse and some of these brass band pieces of Bourgeois. But is there anything else that you've played?
Yeah, I played the Concerto Grosso, which I think is an arrangement of a brass band piece for brass 10 piece.
Mm.
And I've played that. And I remember something else by him about wine. There's a piece, I think, which has got 3 or 4 movements, all with different names of wine in.
Right.
And one of them is called Hock. I seem to remember that. And I've played his Serenade a few times. And obviously I've done all the big brass band pieces. But there's something beguiling about the way he writes, especially for tuba. It's really great to play. There's very few pieces where you think, oh, that guy really knows how to write for the tuba.
So should we be asking our subscribers for requests of the favourite bourgeois pieces that we will have to resuscitate and breathe new life into?
That'd be amazing. I think he's one of those composers that is undeservedly unknown.
Yeah.
And he desperately needs to be rediscovered.
Mm-hmm.
The music is just so incredible. It's almost like he knew exactly how to write for brass instruments.
Yes, exactly. And it seems for strings and woodwind as well.
And he was a lovely man, and he was a philanthropist, and he worked with the National Youth Orchestra, and he worked at universities, and he was just, such a lovely human being.
So, Tony, what are your takeaways from today's conversation? Should we be playing more bourgeois? Should we get our audience to ping us with bourgeois requests?
That would be amazing. I'd love to hear what our amazing subscribers want to hear about Derek Bourgeois. I mean, there's so much repertoire. It's incredible.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thanks very much, Tony, for being with us today. And that's it, folks. You can listen to the Derek Bourgeois Concerto on all major streaming sites, on YouTube, and on the Wallace Collection website. All the links are in the description below. Thanks very much, Tony.
Oh, thank you,
for
John.
being with us today to prove that brass matters.